Hello and welcome to episode 3. No, 4. Let's start that again. Hello and welcome to episode 4 of this, our 2023 NaPoWriMo, no podcast, spoken word podcast, something writing thing that we are doing. Welcome in. I am your host, Bex Sherwood, and I am navigating the IAmLoud team and the Loud Poets through our NaPoWriMo journey. But Bex, what is NaPoWriMo? NaPoWriMo is National Poetry Writing Month, also known as GloPoWriMo or Global Poetry Writing Months, where poets round the world are challenged to write 30 pieces across the 30 days of April. Now, poets are lazy people. We are lazy people, and we have opted to do a more manageable but still challenging 5 poems in 5 weeks. We are on we're on challenge number 3. We have previously shared our page poems and our collaborative pieces, and this week we're jumping right into performance poetry. So please join me in welcoming my guests, fellow poets, my writers, my BFFs, Mark Gallie, Katie Ailes, and Kevin Mclean.
Hello.
Hello. To be here or not to be here? That is the question.
Be here, please. Be here.
Be here.
That's the answer.
Be here.
Contractually obliged.
Always getting cut off before the end of that monologue, folk, aren't they? No one like...
Oh. So welcome in, everyone. This week, we are going to be discussing and sharing our performance pieces. So we were looking at a challenge where having the poem performed aloud, either where a location is relevant or the pacing is relevant, the way that you speak it is relevant, and the piece would not be the same should it just be on a page in front of you. So how did everyone find this challenge this week?
Hard.
Challenging. Yeah.
Not too bad. I'm now going, it would have been a genius thing to be like, my performance needs to be seen in this very specific area, so can't record it here, unfortunately.
I don't want to say I found it hard, because when we were at the open mic, Sarah said to me, she was like, I really like that, like your bit on the podcast where like you hate doing NaPoWriMo and you hate everything that's all the prompts, and you always like struggle during the week and stuff. And I was like, what do you mean a bit? I'm like, that's my life, Sarah. So I was like, oh God, I'm really negative. So I feel I have to say positive things this week. But
you have been kind of like looking forward to performance poetry, I guess. Since we've done page poetry,
you were mad when it was page poems.
Like performance poetry. That's.
I was mistaken.
No.
Kev doesn't like any poetry.
We're
not sure why he leads a poetry-focused organization.
Love hearing it. Love listening to it. Not a big fan of writing it, apparently.
Well, these are lessons that we learn. I felt a lot of pressure going into this week, because obviously we're all performance poets. That is our bread and butter. So it was interesting to kind of go in and be like, okay, actually, this is the vaguest prompt that we could have provided. Sorry to those at home writing performance poems, because we didn't have any guide. Like with form, there's like some rigidity in like what you need to do, either length or meter or rhyme or whatever. But in this, it was like, just go make a poem. See you later. See you next week. So I do apologize. Maybe we'll make our challenges more specific, but it's too late for that now.
Next year, we'll do a prompt of poem, and just see what happens.
I think it's especially on this where it's like, for the sake of the podcast, we're trying to do kind of very extreme versions of it, right? Like a page poem doesn't need to be, the fortune teller thing that I made or some crossword that begs it or whatever. It can be something more kind of like, the spectrum that we talk about, right? Not everything's like hard one end or the other. And so like most performance pieces, what people mean by that is like free form with like a, where the sort of tone and the performance like emphasizes it. Whereas I felt the need to do something that is like, no, it can only be performed, which adds like, that's kind of harder, I think, than thinking of something that can only be read, if you know what I mean, like on the page. I don't know.
Something that can because I did the same thing where I was like something that can only be performed, and I think stumbling into something that can only be performed was very difficult. Whereas then when I sort of fell back to the other thing we've spoken about, or something that is made better or amplified, or it like keys into it in the same way that we spoke about. I think it was like Jasmine Gardosi's roller coaster piece. Like to just read that on the page is still a good poem, but with that extra thing, you're like, oh, and you get the deeper appreciation. So like with the only performance, I struggled to the same thing as you, but I think by relaxing yourself a little bit and going, well, maybe just made better by, or like, because like,
I do want to raise that Katie is being suspiciously quiet.
I really struggled with this. I had a few, and I think it's because, again, like Kev saying, I put a lot of pressure on myself. I had one concept of something that I was going to do and then didn't. And so then I went with another concept, which, I mean, we'll get into it when we do my poem, but is real. I never tried writing like that. And I am very apprehensive about how it will go. So NaPoWriMo is good for challenging you to do things that you haven't done before, but this might be terrible.
Oh no! So I was going to say that's quite interesting, because what really helped me is something that you said like off the cuff to me years ago in a discussion, which I'll say when it comes up. But like it was something you said that was actually incredibly helpful for me about how you do an aspect. But Kev, you were saying something.
I was just going to say I'm very annoyed at myself because Katie and I were leading a workshop designed about specifically writing for performance. We spent 2 days up in Aberdeen delivering this workshop, and I didn't think to use that as an opportunity to write my performance piece. So
I was sitting there looking at you while everyone else was writing, and I was like, He's not gonna do this. No.
But okay. Did you though, Katie? Did you?
I was leading the writing exercise, so I couldn't also write during.
But when I didn't take part, silly Kev, I was also helping lead.
You were sitting there eating hot cross bun.
That's very important work.
One of the wonderful people at the workshop brought us lovely hot cross buns. Why am I going to be rude and not eat the hot cross bun?
Yeah, that would be rude. But I will say, I mean, if you don't want to go first, Katie, that's totally fine.
I do not.
You and Mark have been very cryptic. So I'm curious. My curiosity is piqued. Do you want me to go first? Everyone seems a bit hesitant. I can go first this
week. You go
first,
if you
Bex.
Want.
Okay.
You go first.
Okay, you go first.
Sweet. So my concept for it wasn't a... I didn't have an idea that I liked was the thing. I had like a lot of random lines, a lot of little starters, a lot of like, this could be fun and this could be fun. And it wasn't really until Monday at the open mic that, we hosted. Thanks everyone for coming along to our fabulous open mic. More details about the next one below. Plug. Anyway, it wasn't till then that I really had like an idea. And then I was like, cool, I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to do a poem in standard Happy because it's going to give myself more like a bit of structure to it that's going to help me like get through and get this thing done in time. It's not in standard Happy. It's not in any form. It's also about me, which is weird because my poems are never about me, and it's also 5 minutes long. So all of these things are very unusual for my pieces. So I watched a lot of poetry this week. I watched a lot of Jasmine Gardosi. I watched a lot of Repeat Beat Poet. There's like a bunch of people who are really, really great performers, and I was trying to channel like that energy into writing something. And what I've decided to write about is my surname. So in a short number of weeks, I will be getting married, and at some point in between now, at the time of recording and doing that, I will be introduced to the stage as Bex Sherwood for the last time. And that was kind of weird, right? To change your name and to be a new individual, but you're not new, you're the same person, you've got a different name or whatever. So I kind of wanted to write a little tribute to my name, and this is kind of what this is. So I hope you enjoy it. But yeah, take a pause, get a drink. It's a little bit of a long one for me, and it's currently unnamed, but we'll see where it goes. Shortened down the first name I was given, the 3 words used to identify me from my newborn cry in the hospital to class registration stating present. I did not pick the first, but the second is the best. I puffed out my hairless chest when I chose Bex, thinking I get my much needed edge from the X, marking my spot as cool, my spot as new, my spot of who the fuck even are you? What's in a name if yours ain't the best? So at 17, I was feeling Bex. Off I went, a serial heart arsonist causing crashes as I strode my heels so high with my signature line, "You must be this tall to ride," my friend sighed as I flashed my fake ID, spent my cab fare on the club entry fee to fairly touch the sticky floor inside. My stamped hand splodged with black ink, inhale, chat shit, and I wink as I ask for a light, a fire and conversation starter, my night before disaster blase attitude to the next day's fuck Fridays and fuck you. "Hey Sherwood, where are you going? Why are you so quiet? Why are you always late?" This is it. I thought I had escaped, but now I'm cornered outside the school gates by girls who I know do not know me. Even though we've shared double biology for 6 months or more, they think I'm a bore, and I'm happy for it to stay the same. In my year at school, there were 3 Rebeccas, but that's nothing compared to the number of Rebecca-related nicknames if you're Rebecca or a Reb or a Becky with a Y or an I, and I was still known by my surname. Barely distinguishable from the rest, but that was for the best. I found my comfort in my very few friends. I was 13. I'd rather spend my weekends with D&D, rolling that 1d20 between us. We'd make shit up because the rule book was so long and life was so short, or so we thought. Each day at school, we'd play. "What's the time, Mr. Wolf? Keep away," and "Tag, you're it." We had 10 minutes left before the bell would ring and some boring lessons would begin, maybe maths or worse. I remember this day, age 8. It was the first time I'd noticed, the first time I'd seen it. My hair in braids, my gingham dress green. It was kiss chase, girls versus boys looking teams, and all the kids screamed and giggled with joy. I ran so fast, but looked behind and knew I was safe. Not one single boy had given me chase. It might have been the first time I felt ashamed. Right now, I'm scared I'm a bad feminist. I take my rights seriously and deliriously delight in voting, even though my chosen candidates lost the elections twice. But it's my right. And there are those who died before, who burned at the brunt of this war, who made enough noise for our cries to be heard through ceilings of glass that kept us beneath. Those above who looked down and thought they saw us kneeling. I'm 30, and I'll cry and I'll scream and pronounce every word. We have the right to be seen and the right to be heard. But if I make choices that go with the grain, like, is it wrong of me to take my husband's name? It feels strange. Even though I get to choose, but even with options, I feel like I'd lose if I take his. Is that disrespect to those of history which I admire? And if I desire to stay the same, my current name is not even mine to begin with, but my dad's and his dad's before him. I feel there is no way to win. When I was little, I could take flight. My butt clad in tutu, my legs clad in tights of powder blue. It felt right. I was 5. I would spin most gracefully, boastfully, rounded and glide across the floor in our home. In my head, I was fully grown. My arms stretched high. I saw myself tall and slender. The definition of womanly splendor. A dream kept my podgy feet to hit the floor. The room to fill with rapturous applause. Stage lights galore. Too young to see what others saw. Often I forget that I've aged, my body tired, my hair has grayed, time still passed while all else stayed. This collected absence, my mid-20s, were a wild time to be alive. Most days we tried, brought new traditions back to life. Most nights I cried for those who went, for those who died. Stay inside. Keep your friends far and your family farther. You don't want to be the disaster starter, the first domino to fall. Really, you shouldn't see anyone at all. Keep your cool, keep your calm, carry on. One day in May, the letters came. Our future stashed with gumstock brown cardboard held the declarations we seek. Take a peek as nerves spread, barreling through lines, my cheeks red, and I was so pleased when it said, "You're in." The highest status school to send your kids, and I made it. And at 11 years old, we gathered in the hall and compared. The scandal broke when someone didn't get their pick. Some kids just straight up called in sick. One boy asked where I got and was delighted when it wasn't the same as his. My bubble burst. Coca-Cola, no fizz. The change of celebration to grim realization of starting again, of being someone no one likes, of having no friends. For a new world to start, the old one has to end. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to say goodbye to my name, that Robin Hood-esque claim to fame. The next time it won't feel the same, but I want you to keep the shame. If I lose my name, can I lose the doubt? Can unhappy memories be left out of this new one, the selection of intended reinvention? Pay no attention to the one before, the one who bore the marks of war, but to start afresh. I did not pick my last, but my first is the best. I want no tension in my chest. My surname might change, but it still feels correct when I say hi. My name's Bex. Thank you. That's my piece.
Holy
Damn, Bex.
mother of
Ah.
Bex!
I feel warm. Is that how it's like to read a really long poem?
Oh my god,
Bex, that was
that's
phenomenal.
so good.
Thank you. Thank
Like,
you
The
very much.
freaking chain rhyming, the rhythm that you had going, like, I can tell you've been listening to a lot of jazz and repeat beat, but like it was so in your own voice and it felt so natural and flowing and damn.
Thanks.
That's what I mean by like a really good example of like you don't need to lean into like, obviously there's concept and structure, but like you don't need to lean into like something like so
Mm-hmm.
you'll see where I've gone and stuff, but like that idea of like, oh, it needs to be very showy performance, like that is the most like spoken wordy, like mainstream middle, that sounds really derogatory, like middle of the road spoken word, but that's what I mean by it. It's like like the rhyme structures all over the place, the sort of jumping around in the narrative, the pieces of like sort of high imagery and concept and metaphor mingled with like straight up storytelling, mingled with like these kind of like flowing rhyme driven sections and stuff. It's like all that's what we mean by like free form, right? It's where like you can play with all the little bits. That's such a good example, especially because you are someone who so doesn't really do that, right? Like even in your pieces that maybe aren't like a structured form, right? Like Dear Disney or whatever, where it's like pun poem is a form, according to poets, but like it sticks to one rigid rule and it keeps that beat and tempo, and there's like very recurring rhyme structures. To see you like dispense with that, I mean, that's the style of poetry. I think that might be my favorite poem I've heard from you, just because it feels
thanks.
it feels so like honestly you. There's some stuff in there that like the best poems are poems that make you think of a thing slightly differently. You know what I mean? Just tweak the way you look at it. And like that line where you go like, it's not even my name in the first place. It's my father's name. And I was like, I'd never considered it, because I was always like, well, why would you want to take my name? Because like, surely you want to keep your name. And that idea of like, well, it's fucking not my name. I was like, boom, that line. Or like the Coca-Cola no fizz. It's such a great line for like
Thank you.
School and stuff. And the little tweaks of like voice because that sort of time jumping, that was one thing I was like, I wonder what that poem would look like if you restructured it chronologically. And I'm not sure where I land on it. I like that it doesn't, it still feels coherent, and like those performance cues help.
The only bit of form in this is that each of the different sections, they're not really verses, I don't really know what to refer to them as, but they start with a different letter and it spells out Sherwood, which is my name. And
it's kind of acrostic.
It's kind of acrostic, just
that's so cool.
I was like, so I was then like, okay, I need to pick 7 things and then a conclusionary, like I was like, well, D is going to be whatever the ending is, that needs to go into there. And it meant that when I was like looking at it, I was like, okay, but what interesting words can I start with? It's like why I have like often, one day, when, and like those like really basic things, but it kind of helps me to keep track of like, okay, but now we're moving on to R, so it doesn't matter that the ages are so muddled up and stuff.
I think you keep it coherent because the central premise still runs through, and so it feels like someone dealing with it. You know what I mean? Like you're jumping around. What do all the things your name mean to you? It doesn't necessarily go in a chronological order, and I never felt lost in the point, which is what you want. Also, the whole thing of like wedding as funeral, like dearly beloved, we are gathered here to say goodbye. Like that is that's very. But
that
to not
also what they say at weddings?
Yeah,
dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to see.
Celebrate the whatever, or to commiserate the whatever.
But like that idea of pinning that way, but with no grief, no sorrow in the performance, like with an acceptance, like a rebirth thing. Like, man, that is stellar.
Thank you. I was really anxious to share it, which is kind of why I wanted to get it out of the way first, because it is so kind of directly personal, and all of that is real and authentic. Different conversation.
It's a good example of like a thing I always say to people is you want to do enough of the honest and personal and specific that it feels real, it feels authentic, it feels like you're a genuine point you're trying to make, but enough of the general that people can apply themselves over it. And there's so many beats there where like even I, like everyone has hang-ups about their names and stuff like that, and the separations and like those beats at school and acceptance and like knowing who you are and who you are to different friendship groups and different moments in your life. Like, even if you take away the specific thing of like you are considering that because you are about to change your name, there are still things that like, who am I Kev to? Who am I Kevin to? Who am I like, all that kind of stuff is like wrapped up in other bits of the piece, and that's a really good example of that line being walked perfectly.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to also make sure I acknowledge that was awesome as well, because like it is a fantastic piece. Again, I won't like go back to too many of the bits, but yeah, a lot of really like solid technique. And I think for me, like so many memorable bits, and for me it's that poem where I meet like thinking like I want to hear that again, rather than that thing like I want to read it again. I don't need to hear it again to go, that was awesome, and I could explain it back to someone, but I want to, but I don't want to see it read. I don't want to hear someone read it to me. I want you to do that again. Like that.
I want that tempo, that kick, that rhythm. I want to know the bits that like that end, right, where you go, the dearly beloved, we're gathered to say goodbye, right? You could, if you read that in a book, I think it adds sadness that doesn't exist in the author's voice. And there is the point in spoken word, because you can only take the word and the tools we have is written. And there's a great example of the subversion of what you're saying with the tone you say it with. And like that doesn't exist on a page.
Yeah. I really envisioned this being like on a stage performance, like voice changes match with light changes. So it's like, that's why I try to use like color so much in different things, or give a vibe of like what it was. Like in the nightclub, I would want it to be kind of dark, like there's the dancing. I talk about powder blue and a spotlight and all of those things. And I was like really conscious of that when writing this, to be like, okay, but how would I actually like perform it? And that's why there's like movements with it and references to stuff. And I found myself like, I was here like woo 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 as I was reading it. So I also think
like
it.
Read that quicker than you would on a stage.
100%.
And I think it would benefit from being on the stage. I agree 100% with what Gallie says. Is like, I want to hear that bad, but I want to hear it like boom on a stage after you've done it a couple of times to an audience, so you know where those beats are, you know where those, what lines to leave to resonate, to throw in a pause here and there. Like that's only going to become more and more polished. That is like something you drop in your set now. It's like, that's your opener. Like, hey, I'm Bex. This is a good poem to explain who the fuck I am. But like, 100%.
Thanks. So that's a poem I've wanted to write for ages, like an introductory poem. Didn't mean it to be 6 minutes long, but whatever.
Also, just on a not a poem basis, are you not going to keep Sherwood as like your stage name?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, interesting.
I've never had a particular separation, and I'm nearly out of copies of Poetry for Cows. So if I'm getting it reprinted, I might as well put the different name on it. Anyway, that's enough of me. I've taken up enough of time. Who wants to go next?
I want to go next because I know Kevin and I have done something similar, and he has definitely done it better than me. So I don't want to follow him.
Come into our house. That shit. No.
So let me explain. And like I won't do too many, I'm gonna do a lot of disclaimers. When I was thinking about performance poetry, right, I kind of, as we were saying before, I took the route of something that will only work in live performance. And to do that, I took the route of audience participation being a big part of the poem. And that is a very welcome challenge for me, because I have never done that before. None of my poems at the moment have mandatory audience participation. And I also took the route of using humor. I say that now, if no one laughs, I will be very upset. But those are both things that are quite new to me. So please hold this gently, lovely audience people and fellow loud poets. But yeah, this is also kind of a poem that I've wanted to write for a while, on a theme that I write a lot about. And because it does involve audience participation, I know normally we kind of spotlight one of us, but I mean, you guys are integral to the poem. So I think we're all going to need to be visible for this one. I haven't, none of you guys have heard this before. Normally I kind of run stuff by other people, but I haven't with this. So, yeah, I'll kick off. Here we go. It involves an introduction, which is kind of part of the poem, but who knows? Hello, everyone. My name is Katie. I am an immigrant. I've lived here for nearly a decade on various different visas, but I am not yet an official citizen of the UK. And at some point, you know, I'm interested in getting there. So at some point, I'm going to need to take a citizenship test. So lately, I've been kind of looking at some of the questions on these tests and preparing. And oh boy, most of the questions on UK citizenship tests are not even remotely relevant to my personal experience of life in the UK. So what I figured I would do is set up my own UK citizenship test based on what I have learned in the past 8 years of living in the UK. And since people who are born UK citizens, like the three lovely people in my audience right now, do not actually have to take this test, a citizenship test, to be citizens of the UK, I'm turning the tables on you. Are you guys up for a citizenship test?
No.
Sounds great.
That sounds
You
like
don't have a
no
choice.
choice.
Sounds
You're
great.
a captive audience. Right. So here we go. Just a side note, if you fail, you will be deported. Just so we're clear on that.
Sweet.
All right, here we go. What is the legal drinking age in the UK?
18.
18.
18.
How many Ronnies are there?
2.
Oh.
In the famous Burniston sketch with Rab Florence and Ian Connell stuck in the lift, what floor are they trying to reach?
11.
How many years apart are general elections held?
5.
Depends.
Yeah.
The
Not
correct
since the Fixed
answer
Parliament
is,
Act, you fools.
It depends on when the Tories fancy having general elections. Next question. In Scottish summers, where should your taps be?
Half.
What is the cost of Freddos?
Too high.
Too much.
Correct.
5p in my mind.
How do you pronounce the word Scone?
Scone.
Scone.
I was expecting everyone to have different answers on that. If you want to be my lover, what do you have to do?
You gotta get with my friends.
friends.
Correct. The Eton mess is a...
College.
Dessert.
It is a description of the cabinet. What is the name of the town in Wales with the longest name?
Kevin.
Firepool Gwyngyth Gulgeric Windrobo Clantasilio Gugogoch.
Ditto.
Boy.
Bonus points to Kev.
What he said.
Is it coming home?
No.
Correct. Okay, moving on to some true-false questions now. The UK consists of 4 countries.
True. False.
True.
True.
That was supposed to be easy.
Pressure's on.
Great Britain consists of 3 countries.
True.
False.
We have no idea.
That's true.
Great Britain and Northern Ireland
Oh, so you add the Northern
are
Ireland.
the UK.
Oh, right.
True or false?
Oh,
True or false? Scotland should be an independent country.
True.
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
true.
I don't know how that question got in
I
there.
couldn't even say true. I just said yes.
Let's move on. Let's move on from the true false round. That seemed quite difficult. Please finish these phrases. 9 out of 10 cats do.
Countdown.
Wallace and
Gromit.
God save the...
Dunno.
Children.
Wow.
No comment.
Yeah. NA.
Mince and
Ties.
mock the...
Weak.
Yes, sir, I can.
Boogie.
Fish and
Chips.
Chips.
salt and...
Vinegar.
Vinegar.
Oh, good
yeah.
But on a chippy salt and sauce.
Spotted.
Dick.
Former Met Police Commissioner Cressida.
Dick.
King Charles is a...
Dick.
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 Monarch, rude lads. Faulty,
Towers.
Alton,
Towers.
Grenfell,
Towers.
Tower.
famous DJ Sir Jimmy,
Savile.
refugees drowning in the English,
Channel.
97 dead in the Hillsborough,
Massacre.
asylum seekers will now be deported to
Rwanda.
Do you belong here? Do I?
How dare you do that right at the end, Ailes?
Couldn't just let us have fun.
Wow.
Oh.
That was whoa.
Yeah.
So
You know how we
thank
normally
you for
talk about devastating people?
so yeah,
But
thank you for
that works.
going
like,
through that
that's exactly
experiment
how
with
that
me.
should be. Oh, sorry.
No. That's the poem over. I was just saying, like, thank you for going through that with me, because I think with audience involved poems, like, there were things that I expected to happen which didn't. And that is very useful market research. So, and it's one of those things with like audience participation where you don't know, you're not done the poem until you've done it a million times and you know generally how people will react. The Welsh town name, I don't think most audiences will know that, but I knew that Kev knew it. So it's like,
it's what, but it's also one of those ones where I think that will never be performed the same way twice, because it can't be
not.
like, although, you know, where people choose to answer quickly, where people choose to stay quiet, where people choose to object, you know, like, and throw in like that's a very clever, very interesting way to do that.
I want to add in more rhyme and rhythm, because at the moment there's like, it's not poetic, and things don't have to be like
at the end,
but it finds it at the end.
What is poetry?
Like, it's the bit where you're like, oh, this is like, but that's the clever bit, is you're tricked into, it's like, you're like, oh, audience participation, fear, citizenship test. Please don't ask me what's actually on the citizenship test. I'm sure I don't know. Oh, okay, I might understand this thing. And so like you go through so many emotions, and as an audience member, I think that's really fun. Is like, as the poet, of like, what emotion can you evoke and chop and change? I think you go through so many there, and you bring it back so poetically well with that, like, I
think I could maybe make that more gradual. I don't
know.
I don't know.
No?
That,
I don't think it
when
should
that
be.
hit, that for you were like, because it was like, yay, we're having fun. Oh, right, yeah.
When you watch this back, you will see immediately the devastation hit all of us as we continue to support you finishing the poem, as we're like, oh yeah.
But it does get quieter, and I think with a bigger audience, that'd be interesting.
Is people to say nothing. And what I definitely wouldn't do is I wouldn't then input. I would just continue at a steady pace to say the things. And I think they will answer less and less, because I didn't feel comfortable saying it.
Yeah.
That's really, because I wasn't sure.
Grenfell, and I went.
And especially because I was obviously using rule of three, but not for comedy, like because, you know, faulty, Tower, Alton, Tower, Grenfell.
For me. And people want to hold up, because I've had this before, when people want to like hold up and go like, not a poem. Like that is the dividing line between comedy skit and conceptual spoken word free form poem, right? Because that is pathos and bathos, right? Like together, and that is something that poetry accomplishes in a way that like stand-up or skits don't normally. That real gut punch at the end, that real switch on its head, is like important to it, I think.
Thank
and
you.
I often as well, I will say, like, people bring up trigger warnings or content warnings, and I often say, like, you know, it's very rare that someone uses something that should be content warned as a twist effectively. So do your content warning. This would be the exception I would hold up. I feel that twist at the end, and I think because you don't actually linger on any of the issues, right? Like, it's you say the names, you say the thing, but you're not actually diving into those subjects. That would be the exception I would look at, because I think that turn at the end without prior knowledge is like important for it.
Well, yeah, I'd not even thought about that, but yeah, because I'm more trying to just do like headlines and things that, like, you know, it's not content warned anywhere that we're sending people to Rwanda. It's celebrated by the government and the media.
I mean, the only one that really stood out was the Savile thing.
Savile, that's a good point.
But again, it's a name, like, you're not diving into that, right? Like, and especially because you present those things as the thing that they're like calling him celebrated like radio DJ is like a really good way to do that. Like, because that is what he was here. Like, it's only, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. That's really strong. Because I agree with Gallie. I thought it was going to be asking us questions we didn't know the answers to. So it was like the wave of relief by the fact that it's like, oh, it's silly things, and then to come all the way back around to like, no, it's things we don't have the answer for. It's like such a, you know, powerful bookend to that.
Because I kind of had two different versions, and this is one of the reasons that I really struggled with this piece. Is initially it was like a mix of actual questions and my ones, and then it was like, no, you have to choose one. Like, only so like there's a couple that are actual questions, like how many. So first of all, lads, there are 4 countries in the United Kingdom.
I was like, there's 4 countries.
Great Britain.
The Great Britain
One
bit
too
threw
many.
me.
Great Britain is an island.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were asking. This, I thought you were doing like, it's got 4. And then I thought it was the same question again, but like 3 to see if we got it wrong twice. And I was like, no, I'm sticking with 4. But that's very clever, because I was too panicked about getting it wrong to listen.
Because Britain has 3, Great Britain has 4.
No,
Great Britain. Yeah, because Britain is the island, right? So there's 3.
Great Britain is the island.
Let's move on.
Anyway,
loud geography will never be a thing.
But yeah, because like at some point I'd love to do something with the actual questions, because go and look up some practice questions. They are incredibly leading, problematic, and many of them are very obscure. So 2/3 of the UK could not pass the citizenship test.
It's when you brought it up, I was like, no chance.
I also think there's a lot of room to, like, with repetition of that, to find those beats that you know people are going to mess up on and like underpin it. Like, dude, I'm from America and I know that. Like, I bet you know how many states there are. Stop watching American TV. You know, like when there's like, there will be those, you know, almost like the stand-up thing, right, where you get that skin to it, and you'll have like a Rolodex of stuff that you're kind of throwing out in response to people's things.
Totally. I'm excited to try it at an open, like I want to do some more work on it, but then try it at different settings and see how different bits go over. So thank you for being my first audience, guys.
Thank you, Katie. It was such a great piece. You did such a good job. Well done. It was funny as well.
It was funny.
It was really funny. You did a great job. And then
Katie's all like, oh, I don't do funny. Katie's the funniest person I know. Not always intentionally, sure, but like a hilarious person nonetheless.
Irrespective of all of that,
thanks, Kate.
We should move on to, well, if you didn't want to be too near Kev,
I guess I should go in the middle, right?
Wouldn't put me last. Haven't actually completed the task.
What?
I have not
finished.
I have not finished my poem.
Oh, okay.
And the reason I have not finished it is because I think it will take significantly longer than a week to write. It is very complicated. I have the entire structure and I know what I want to do with it. And I have written a large bit of it that I can present, but there is no sort of end. So I would rather not go last, because it doesn't, I will then be like, and then that will continue.
The floor is yours, Kev.
Okay, so, oh, man, I've cheated quite a lot. So, because I've also kind of...
You say cheated. I say failed the challenge. But...
Yeah, that's fair. Because I have kind of done a similar concept to something I have done before. And the thing that kind of sparked me thinking about it was because it is based off a collab that I have. That I'm sad because I don't do that collab, because I don't gig with the person that I wrote the collab with. And that's like, I killed a lot. I spent a lot of time in my early writing like collab poems, and now I can't do any of them. And I have this thing where, like, if I'm like an obsessive personality. So like when I'm interested in a thing or looking at a thing, I just do that thing and nothing else. So I have like these black holes of attention, which is particularly difficult when you're like writing, because that's the only thing that's there in my brain.
It's called a hyperfixation.
Well, yeah, that's it. And so this week I've been mostly doing Dungeons and Dragons. I'm going to be DMing a game. It's a game I know of and have played, and I'm a big RPGer, but I haven't actually DM'd a Dungeons and Dragons game. I've never done that, but I did have a collab poem that involved Dungeons and Dragons, and I am reworking it, make it a bit more like make a bit more sense, and do it as a single voice. So I'll pick on Gallie because I'm going to assume he's the one who has a D20 closest to him, or Bex. Bex has one in their hand.
I have a pot of dice on my desk.
There's only one way to settle this. Both you roll a D20, and that'll decide who my volunteer is. Obviously,
Nerds.
2. Also 2.
Roll again. Obviously, if I was doing this to an audience, you will see the point that I will pick someone at random.
All yours, Bex.
17.
Natural 1.
Yeah, that's it.
But in this situation, it will be Bex.
Nice.
Oh God! Actually, this is.
But just because I can't point at you, if you know what I mean. So. Again, I don't need to be singled out. May as well just keep it on the four of us for this now. Roll a dice and be what it tells you. Choose random chance. Put your faith in fate's hands. Let the universe guide you. Unveil what lies inside you. Prepare for the trials you trail. Sorry. Roll a dice and be what it tells you. Choose random chance. Put your faith in fate's hands. Let the universe guide you. Unveil what lies inside you. Prepare for the trials you'll trail through. Would you still roll if you knew the chaos it would lead to? Would you choose a god's protection, or would you deal with a devil? Would you lie and cheat and steal from people? Would you turn to nature or turn to rage? Would you bend reality to another shape? Would you run to the very edge of the world or heal a soul with a single sung word? Could you fight forever? Could you be brave? Could you find balance or turn wild magic tame? Would you see adventure where others only see a game? Start your journey by telling me your name.
Bex!
Not fantasy enough. You are now Bexagar Stormbringer, adventurer extraordinaire, and your first adventure is to join me on stage. Give it up for Bexagar. At which point, I would hand you a D20. We must hear your story told before you search for riches and renown. Let the D20 of fate roll whenever you hear this sound. Bexagar Stormbringer.
12.
Orc from the land of
17.
Elves of the noble order of
3.
Halfling thieves, wielder of
11.
A French baguette and protector of
8.
The innocent children. A complicated person for sure. You set off on a journey to find your lady love, to slay the beasts that took her, and most importantly, to level up. Upon a mighty steed you ride through valley, field, and dale to the very edge of the land you know, to a fork in the trail. The east road leads through the bog of woes, where nightmares fear to tread, a reeking marsh of filth and rot, where everything is dead, swarming clouds of biting bugs who suck blood just for fun, a road few choose to travel down, a road from which nobody returns. The west road leads round all of that shit. 1 to 19 is east, 20 is west.
Oh shit. Nope. I'm going east too.
That is quite the choice you've made. Some might even call it brave. They would be wrong. You're quite deranged. But the love you seek to save is worth at least a little pain. So you brave the bites, ignore the whispering trees. You don't follow the lights or indulge those corpses' pleas. You stick to the path, but then you see where it leads. At the end of the road, an ogre, keen to make somebody bleed. Fight the ogre! 1 to 10, fail. 11 to 20, succeed.
3.
You fight with every ounce of strength you have, but the ogre club breaks your French baguette in half, and with sadistic, mocking laughs, he strikes you down. You fall at pace towards the ground, and in that moment, a memory's found. Only a face, your lady love. Your vision blurs. Through cracked teeth, you mumble words. Don't give up. And then it would be so that's as far as I've gotten on the
like what a cliffhanger. That's very
and then
D&D,
it would go into like you would get taken to like a dungeon, and then you would have to escape the dungeon, or you would have to storm the castle, and like on and on it would go with like depending on the roles, and there's like a table for what your weapon and your race and stuff is, and it would be so it would come up on the thing the table of options and shit like that.
What?
Here you go, Kev. Here's the one to save you.
That's dope.
And we'll find out what happens next
Session.
session.
So when can
There's your-
everyone play?
Yeah.
Then you never play
Well
again.
done. Very well done.
Wow, that was so
Very
fun.
well.
It's why
This
I
is
haven't
why
finished it.
I wanted
'cause
him to
it's-
go after me.
It's a bit dense. The writing is complicated to make sure it works, and as it goes on, it becomes bigger and bigger because the permutations kind of spiral out from each other. So I'm going to keep working on it because I think it'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, I did not finish it.
That sounds great.
Oh, sorry, Bex.
I was gonna say maybe you can share it in like a wrap-up episode later on this month.
Yes, that would be
Maybe
fun.
that
That would be fun.
And then you, because last year Mark missed a challenge because he was not well, right?
Mhm.
But we said that he still passed NaPoWriMo because he finished the poem before the wrap-up
Before
episode.
the end of the
So,
month, yeah.
That's
leave
fair.
that up
That's
to
fair.
you.
So I will
That's
keep
great.
filling
Great
it.
piece though, so fun, great
So
to be
good.
involved, love being a drama queen, so that was fun for me too. Mark, you go.
No, I was just going. It's very clear. Even if you take like that start bit before you get to the, like the branching path, that particular thing, like it's like, and this will potentially date this episode, I suppose it's like the Dungeons and Dragons movie of the thing of like, if you've not seen it, then you get like, oh, that's very cool, and you get this sort of like slightly shallower dive. If you play a bit more D&D, or depending how much D&D you play, there will be more and more like references and things that you put in there that are like, I appreciated an awful lot that you went through, like the classes very like rapid fire in a description. I thought that was very clever.
It's harder to do than I thought it would be.
I've wanted to do it for a while, and I'm annoyed you've done it better sooner. But no, really good
some of the
job.
nuances between the classes are subtle.
Yeah,
so-
and like fair play to you for doing that, because I know for a thing like that, like you were probably gonna want to get that off book and retaining all of that branching path.
Well, I don't, and that was one of the things when it was a collab. I think it had to be off book because it has to feel almost like a conversation. And really, what the piece was when it was a collab was like one person trying to facilitate a game of Dungeons and Dragons and one person having a breakdown and using it to deal with personal problem.
That's fair.
And the back and forth. Whereas I think this one, what I want to do is actually make it more like permutive and like
To be fair, you
out
could
more.
if
So
you,
I think I would have a DM screen.
if you had like a massive
Great.
binder or any of that, you could go prop heavy with this, to be fair, if you wanted to.
Which is kind of what I
Sure.
want to do. And then like, yeah, the sort of having especially that early section, like the tables, because I think it's very funny to be like, you are an orc from Rivendell with a
very clever.
whatever thing. Works really well, and being able to see your role activate those things, it explains how it works very quickly without having to do like an explainer to the person. Roll that dice when you hear the sound, and here's the thing that explains it, and it makes it more intuitive, hopefully.
It's
So
a
fun.
great piece, super fun. I'm sure we could go into it much more, but I'm conscious of the time, and we have someone who has not yet shared, and we still have a challenge to set, so we've got to let's move swiftly on. Mark.
Well, it's worked out weirdly well, I think, the through line
Swear
of
to
this,
God, if
because
yours
my
is
poem,
also D&D.
well, my poem is quite short.
Okay.
But another way I'm thinking to think of this poem is not as a short poem, but as a 1 minute casting time abjuration first level poem, which will mean very little to anyone else. But again, for those of that means
so
to
cute.
Nope.
basically, I've said it a lot on this that I'm not quite sure if I've made a poem or not. And this might be one where I'm going to claim a lot of things. But I will save for the cliffhanger of the thing. The bit that got me with this, and the thing that Katie said to me a while ago that I found very interesting, is we were talking about choreography during performance. And I remember you said that for a lot of your poems, you have the choreography figured out while you're writing it, which I found very interesting because I am write the poem and go, oh, my hand can move like this then. That kind of like, or sometimes it works alongside. So I took that bit and went, what would be choreography that matches the thing? So I'm going to do the thing, and then hopefully the explanation will make slightly more sense. I'm going to really try and watch my sort of spacing here to also be close to the mic so it can be heard, but also, okay. How big's the screen here?
Ooh, yeah, you're good.
That's about enough sort of size.
And we
Okay.
can hear you.
Okay, let's give this a shot, shall we? This is the poem. This is the way. This the method to keep at bay In theory, this will work. In practice, nightmares lurk. We will be safe. These are the words. This is the spell. These are the tools we use to tell. With precision, we write. With text, we bind the night. We will be safe. This is the form. This is the shape. This the frame to prevent escape. Through the lines we contain. Through structure, we remain. We will be safe. This is the chant. This is the charm. This the command to do no harm. By the sound we invoke. By silence bonds be broke. We will be safe. Hear the magic. Hear the pact. Hear the last climactic act. Parts of one, sum of all. Right complete. Hear the call. Let us be safe. And that is my protection from all the bad things in my poetry. So we're all safe. And now the stuff that I do after that can't get in.
That's literally what I was about to say. I was like, you say the word safe in there a whole bunch, and it still makes me feel incredibly unsettled.
It's still a magic spell. Respect the arcana, people.
The real like Doctor Strange vibe. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
obviously the movement is very,
like,
I'm trying to, camera-wise, I don't know how well that would do, but because I was like, part of this came from like the concrete idea of like a magic circle, but where this works, one for the thing is what it has, so it has verbal and semantic components, which means it needs to be said and the motions are important. You need to draw it. And the way it would be written is that, like, because if it was on the page, that last verse would be on the outside, the thing that binds the basic shape, and you would read that first, and so the right would be invoked wrong, and so you have the, so it's got lore to it, and that's why it's a performance poem. But also I liked that for me, that I can do that, and then that'll keep us safe from the rest of my horrifying poetry. Sorry, Katie.
No, I was, because I always assume that I'm missing. Is it D&D rooted, or is it just totally you making up this spell?
I tried to make up basically a magic spell, and so like
dope.
there's D&D essence to that, because it takes like a minute to read roughly, and so there's bits you like. I was like, I'll fit it to the D&D because it's fit to there. But I sort of went, in that Doctor Strangey kind of like old magic invoked, the wand is important for the drawing shape. I was like, magic is a very performance-based thing.
Absolutely, the physicality
and
being
so
in it.
The choreography needed to go part and parcel to the thing, which is when you said you choreographed to your writing. I sort of had graphic idea and thing, but to the point where you could write it as a concrete poem, but it wouldn't work. It would actually, the spell wouldn't work. It would fail, and then you wouldn't be protected from stuff. So
that is dope. Such a great way to make people aware of what you're going to do within like the latter part of your set as well, to like set a tone of being like, this might get spooky, but you're fine. Like basically you're in a room listening to poetry. It's going to be scary, but it's okay. And to kind of like give people that, that sort of breathing space. If someone is very like, doesn't want to hear spooky poems, it's a good one to start with, to be like, mine's going to be spooky. Here's a protection spell. So if someone needs to make their way out, they could do that perfectly well, but it's a positive piece. It's not like humorous and making light of what you're doing. And it's done with like this like respect for, all things supernatural. It really fits within the tone of what you're doing while being completely different from a lot of your other pieces.
It's a bit of a diversion from the thing, because it's like, it's short, it's like got quite a weird structure. I mean, I might work on the actual thing of it, and again, once that's a bit more perfected, I'm sure that in like big sweeping arms will potentially look quite good.
Harder to do on for the frame of the camera.
And for stuff, but like that's. So,
I'm still desperate for you to do like an hour-long like Call of Cthulhu inspired like Darren Brown style, where there's loads of like sort of bits of magic and horror and in the sort of Victorian trappings of Call of Cthulhu. Like, there's room for some weird Halloween Gallie show.
Freya Hansen back. We'll do that poem that was a collab poem and also a card trick all at the same time. Only done it once.
You know what I mean? That kind of like that Darren Brown thing where it's like one part mystic, one part magician, that kind of like you could do some really interesting stuff with
Pissing
that
off both
as
strains of
poetry.
magic practitioners.
Yeah,
people that
yeah.
practice magic probably don't like, and people that practice like the other magic are like, just no one's on my.
But wrapping it up in like a poetic presentation would be a really interesting way to do it. Like
But yeah,
it's very
so
cool.
was it to thing on that? I was like, tried the thing, made a magic spell, thought that would be fun.
While Mark learns to pull rabbits from hats for his future hour-long Halloween special as part of the Horror Fest in Edinburgh. Can't wait. Super excited. Going to grab my tickets already. But I'm afraid we do have to move on. We have a new week. Everyone did so great. Well done on your poems. We have a new week and a new challenge. And our next challenge that we're going to be looking at is remix poetry.
I mean, technically, my D&D poem is a remix of a poem.
Did it for the wrong.
Shame you used it this week, then, didn't you?
Whoops. Oopsie daisy. Irrespective, Katie, can you shed some light on what we're looking at for remix poems this week?
Yes. So there's a long and wonderful tradition in poetry of taking existing material and changing it, twisting it, remixing it in some way to become new material. So found poetry is remixing. So for this challenge, you could do a found poem. We've got a great workshop on this channel for found poems. We've got another workshop on erasure poems. So either of those would count. Other ways of thinking about it, you could take a song and remix that in some way. So I know we're going to show an example at the end, which is a fantastic way of doing that. Maybe think of a piece of popular music and use that. There are also ways of taking existing bits of language and kind of unpacking them and remixing them. So maybe you want to take a political slogan or kind of even just a single word, which is used in a certain way, and kind of remix it and look at another side of it. There are other poetic forms that you can look at. There's something called a cento, C-E-N-T-O, where you take lines from other people's poems and you kind of splice them together and remix them. So lots and lots of different options for the remix challenge.
Everyone bust out your dirty shovels. Grubby
shovels.
Grubby shovels.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, golden shovels work. Yeah.
So we have a lot of different forms. There's loads of things that we can do here. We're going to link a bunch of them down below. So if you are looking to remix something, and just remember, good poets borrow, great poets steal. So that is really what we're looking at this week. We've got 7 days to come up with something that's inspired by something else. It doesn't have to be directly using the words from it. It could be using, some of the inspiration from it. I think there's a lot of scope here to play with other art if you wanted to, other different forms, whether that's music or something more visual. If you want to kind of go on a remix page route, that's the thing you can do with a range of poems. That tends to be very visual. So yeah, I think it's going to be a good one. Everyone feeling cool for remix week? Excited? Interested? I mean, Kev's feeling annoyed that he did his remix of his own old work a week earlier. But
it's going to be picking what to remix, I think, is where I think once I've got that, I think I'll know where I'm going. But I think it's going to be next week will be, I picked it yesterday, right? Or something like too many options. Too many choices.
So, I mean, dabble your toe in all of them, see what floats your boat. But we will be back here next Sunday to talk about our remix poems, to set our next challenge for episode 5 of NaPoWriMo 2023. In the meantime, if you are dying for more poetry content, then just subscribe to our YouTube channel. We release 3 videos a week. If that's not enough for you, you can join our Patreon, where you get access to our full Edinburgh showcases, including all of those that have already gone. So we've had Joelle Taylor on our stage this year, and we've had a bunch of great poets in 2022. All of those videos are available. Fringe shows are available. We got hours and hours of content for you available for as little as £5 a month over on our Patreon. So please do feel to go and check that out. As I said, linked below. If you are in Inverness and you're interested in sharing one of your newly crafted performance pieces, a great face for a performance piece is at a poetry slam. Our Highlands Heat will be taking place in the month of May. More details are below, and we still have time for you to sign up. So if you are Inverness or Highlands adjacent and you can make it along on the 13th of May, then check out the details below. But I think with that is most of the plugs that we need to do directly. editing Bex here. It was not most of the plugs that needed to be done. The only thing that I didn't really mention is the video we're sharing this week. Our remix example is this great example from Mars O'Shea, who won our Fringe Slam last year, and their performance of Love, Love, Love. So please enjoy that. Anyway, we'll be back next week with more plugs, more poems, and more general laughing at each other and embarrassing ourselves. Everybody say goodbye!
Goodbye!
King Saul fell on his sword when it all went wrong. Joseph's brothers sold him down the river for a song. Sonny Liston rubbed some tiger balm into his gloves. Some things you do for money, some you do for love, love, love. Each of you is a reminder to us of what love can be. You are cruelty, freedom, the beating heart, you're the leading light that shines and sparks. You're a burning sensation, or at least a smolder. You are Sisyphus pushing up his boulder. You are all the reasons the seasons change. You are curling clouds, you are sun, and you are rain. You are her eyes like gas fires, his passionate tears. You are my source of total irrational fear. You are my ex calling me at 4 a.m. You are me calling my ex back at 5 a.m. You are inadvisable sex at 6 a.m. You're churning guts and your mistakes, and you're the perfect gift on their birthday. You can be cruelty and chaos and fate, and you can be madness and stasis and change. And Raskolnikov felt sick, but couldn't say why. When he saw his face reflected in his victim's twinkling eyes. Some things you do for money, some you do for fun, but the things you do for love are gonna come back to you one by one. Love, love is gonna lead you by the hand into a wide and soundless place. Now we see things as in a mirror dimly, and soon we shall see each other face to face, and you'll find me face to face it. I am nothing until I'm seen your gaze. It's as blind as I am, as all lovers are. It's an idiot tin man lacking his heart. It's a sometimes awful experience, but awfully perfect or kind, or the fear is overwhelming at times when you're waiting for phone calls or last chances at those tropic storm romances, because I want the love that exhausts me, to run a marathon over your body, to do calisthenics over your tongue. I want a love that burns my lungs, and I want a love like my heart's gonna pop, and I'm starting to think I'm not fit enough. I want the love that's the moment we stop moving. Relief is enough to overwhelm us with peace, that sensation of stillness, it thrills us. I want the love that eventually kills us. And way out in Seattle, young Kurt Cobain snuck out to the greenhouse, put a bullet in his brain. Snakes in the grass beneath our feet, rain in the clouds above. Some moments last forever, then some flare out with love, love, love. Some flare out quickly and some are old fires burning, the embers no longer bright, they fade. Because it seems like no love is better than what got away, or no love is better than bygone days. It's bullshit. Love is a series of moments, a binding rope to hold us from past to future through present. You will be every future ex-lover's presence. Love is ties that bind us, that hold us together in tangled strings, or hold you to bedposts if that's your thing. And it's love in the time of cholera. And it's love in the time of push-up bras. And it's love in the time of sweatpants romancing. And it's love in the time of all-night dancing.